Hey guys, I'm Steve. This is Johnny Fix-It's One Man Shop Show. I'm going to show you how to fix one of the most common problems on the most common starter out there, and I'll show you how to do it for free. So let's get to work. Okay, this is one of the most common starters out there. You see them in all shapes and sizes. This one just happens to be a GM starter. Came off of a vehicle that, well, it's old enough. It came with an ashtray from the factory, so there you go. Anyway, the problem with this starter is it had intermitting problems. The owner said that half the time it worked, half the time it didn't work. So we're going to test it out real quick. And I'm just using a low voltage battery here. So check the starter motor first just to make sure the motor itself actually works. The way we'll do that, we'll apply some power to it right here. And that works. Now, since we know the motor works, there was no hesitation there, let's check the solenoid out. Solenoid's easy enough to check out. And I just need to grab a tool. There it is. Let me show you how this works. This lug right here is what comes from your battery. This is your main battery cable off your positive post of your battery. This little lug right here is the actuator for the solenoid. And if you don't know how any of this works, the way this works is when you apply power at the actuator, it draws a piston inward, throwing the Bendix outward into the flywheel so that when the motor's turning, it will engage the flywheel and start the motor. Now the way it does that is it has a commutator on the inside here, a switch, a relay, whatever you want to call it, so that when you apply power to this, it will snap this and actually short this lug to this lug. So let's see if the starter solenoid is good. And we know the starter solenoid is good because it is jumping. So that tells me that the problem is not with the motor. The Bendix wouldn't have anything to do with this. Now, if it was engaging and the Bendix was just spinning on the flywheel, then yeah, that would be a problem. But 99% of the time, they want to sell you a new solenoid. You don't need a new solenoid. Let me show you how to fix that real quick. I'm going to go ahead and take this off. Real simple. You got to disconnect the solenoid from the starter motor. Now, when we take this apart, there are two posts that remain with the solenoid after I pull this case off. That's this post and this post. So I'm going to go ahead and take this nut off of this one. It'll be there loosely, but it'll still be in there. It's connected by a hard wire. This is actually the wire that goes directly to the starter solenoid's coil. Now, let's see here. Take our two bolts off to get the solenoid out of there. Ah, come on. Cooperate. This is not something you could normally do on the vehicle. There's just not enough room in there. So you do have to pull the starter motor off for this. Most of the time because you got a exhaust manifold going right across the top of this. So now we'll just take this, turn it, get this free, and we'll take that out. This is the cylinder I was talking about that pulls the Bendix out towards the flywheel. And the spring here is what keeps it in there. Inside here, you just see nothing but a little pin at the bottom of this. This pin at the very bottom, I don't know if you can see that or not, that pin is the back side of the commutator. So now we're going to just take this off first. Alright. And we've got two bolts that hold this together. Real simple. Yeah, we want to be real careful when we're taking it apart. Make sure everything slides out easy. Catch your little washers. All right. This is the actuator right there. This is a contact. And what we're going to do is clean that contact up, and we're going to clean up the commutator. And if you want to look at that commutator, you can see where it strikes all the way around. The reason they make it this way is because it has to hit this to turn the motor, give power to the motor, and it transfers from this side of this lug across the commutator to that. And every time it jumps up and hits, hopefully it turns to a new spot. What happens is, after you've done this so many times, this gets hot and it gets nasty. So what I've got to do is I've got to clean this up, clean that up, and clean that up. And we'll put it back together again. It'll be good as new. Okay, I just wanted to show you this. This is the bolt. This is the lug that goes to the battery. And if you'll notice here, all the scarring across there, the black, this is where most of the contact is being disturbed. When they get hot like that, they don't always hit, and that's the reason that this starter's been having problems. So we'll get that cleaned up. I've already cleaned up the rest of it, so we'll get back to that in just a second. Okay, before I put this back together again, I want to show you something here. Now, this is the lug that goes to the battery, and if you'll notice this right here, it looks so worn. That's the side that was over here. I've reversed this. That way the commutator will now hit this area, the new fresh part. And if anybody's ever wondered what this extra lug right here is for, well, that just applies 12 volts back to whatever the ignition circuit needs to be while the starter's engaged. Now, on the actual solenoid, same thing. Let me move that out of the way. Same thing again. Okay. You can see the worn part is back over here. That's because I have put the good part on this side so that when it's on top, the good side is now facing the commutator. And here's the commutator. You've got to get this clean. Used to, on the older ones, you could just take this off and flip it over. Not so much. But you want to get this thing smooth enough where you can't feel anything with your fingernail. So we'll put that back on there just like that, so that when it comes up, it strikes there. Now, let me get started on putting it back together. Okay, so let's just put it back together again in reverse order. Real simple. Be very careful when you're putting these in. You want to make sure everything goes back in the right place and doesn't fight you. This one's going to fight me. Come on. There it is. Before I tighten these down, I want to go ahead and put these screws back in. And if you'll notice, I also clean my lug up. Everything's got to be clean. If you don't have it clean, you're not going to get good connection. You'll get resistance. And we know resistance is futile. So we don't want that. Now, if you've got resistance, the higher the resistance, the more heat is generated. And that will wipe out a solenoid very fast. It'll also wipe out your starter motor, kill your battery, all kinds of problems. So we want to have good connections on everything. Same reason when you don't have a good connection on a battery cable, you'll notice the battery cable's real hot. That's because there's resistance, because it doesn't have a good connection. All right, put that back on there. Put this back on here. This doesn't have to be super dog tight, nice and firm. And the same way with this trigger wire, just nice and firm. All right, let's put this back together again. Real simple. Make sure your spring, your cylinder fall in there. Line up with the hole. Shove it in. Twist it back in position. Get your screws started. So difficult, huh? And we've got one more bolt to put in here for the starter motor itself. All right, let's test it out. Ground wire, power. Works. Done deal. That's why you need good connections. You saw the smoke. Plus, that's a very, very small wire trying to take a hell of a lot of draw that the starter motor puts out, or it takes up. Anyway, if you learned something from this, please like and subscribe. If you felt like I saved you about $250 because nobody sold you a starter motor, please like and subscribe. And guys, remember, if you're not good looking, you got to be good at everything else. Hey, let's get back to work.